Hi, my name is Samantha Vela, and today I'm going to be presenting my MCS120 Final project. So let's get started. So starting off with the introduction, there are many films that we watched this quarter that highlight important issues. As a matter of fact, Steve McQueen's Small Acts episodes are an example of this. Thus, in this project, I will examine how these episodes bring to light important topics/issues that were happening back then, such as women being mistreated, racism, etc. So the first Small Axe episode I wanted to discuss was the Lovers Rock episode. So this film was directed by Steve McQueen and it was released in 2020. Furthermore, this film highlights the issues Black people were dealing with back then. For instance, women were often being mistreated and sexualized. So these were actually two scenes from the film that stood out to me. So in the first scene, we see the camera focusing on the woman's body, which shows that she's being sexualized. We can also see this by where the man's hands are placed. His hands are placed in her butt, which I feel like is really inappropriate. And I don't think there was a reason for the film to include that. And then the second scene, this scene shows the fact that women had to use violence to solve problems. As a matter of fact, Martha had to grab the glass and hold it up against Bammy because this is the only way he would listen. It's crazy to think because in the beginning of the episode, the girl in the red dress didn't like Marta because Marta was getting like all the attention from the guys. But towards the end, the girl in the red dress ends up being really thankful to Martha because Martha saved her from being raped. And yeah, Marta was one of the characters that really stood out to me in the film because she wasn't afraid like to stand up to anyone, especially men. And yeah, I think she was like really like empowering. So lastly, another scene that I wanted to talk about was this scene because we see the fact that a Black woman couldn't walk alone in the night without being catcalled. Unfortunately, this is still an ongoing issue in today's society. I can relate to this because as a woman of color, I'm afraid to go out in the night by myself because I have a fear of getting raped or kidnapped. And I don't know, it's just sad. Like as a woman, we go through this and we're still experiencing this in current times. So yeah, this I feel like I could just relate a lot to this specific scene. So what have critics said? So according to Collins, this Lovers Rock episode, it astutely at times, even polemically, dredges up everything that comes with this territory. The police violence and ensuing uprisings, the music and food and rituals of daily life, the prevailing attempts of Black immigrants to make spaces for themselves and to hold onto and protect those spaces in a country whose hostilities were impressed upon them by not only the neighbors but the highest powers in the land. Furthermore, Collins mentioned that the blue parties of the kind McQueen recreates here were defiant alternatives to the Black club scene, which, thanks to the government enforced closures of Black clubs in the early 80s, suddenly withered. So, in other words, Black people weren't allowed to go to white people clubs, so they created these like blue parties that were like hosted by like DJs. And then lastly, Collins mentioned I think too of the abundance of holy crosses and of the immigrants' generations' religion impressed upon their British-born children comes off as both a safety net and a rebuke to the unholy matrimonies of music, sex, bodily freedom. That quote or statement like stood out to me because throughout the film we do see like this man walking around with the cross like a few times, and the fact that the camera like focuses on that signifies that it's really important. So yeah, after reading this, like it made sense like why we kept seeing like crosses like pop up throughout the film. So the second and last small episode I wanted to discuss was the red, white, and blue episode. So this film was directed by Steve McQueen and it was released in 2020. This film also brings to light the difficulties Black people were facing back then. For instance, the male protagonist, Leroy Logan, decides to join the police force, but he receives so much hate for it. Not to mention that he isn't taken seriously by his coworkers. It's important to note that the film also highlights racism. So I wanted to start off by talking about these two specific scenes. So in the first scene, we see Leroy's father getting beat up by white police officers. He was saying that he didn't do anything wrong, but the police officer starts beating him up regardless. I feel like this scene like really stood out to me because Leroy's father literally wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just like he was just explaining that he didn't do anything wrong, and he doesn't know why the police officer was like accusing him of doing something wrong. But literally right before he can even finish like saying what he was gonna say, like the police officer like attacks him. And I feel like this is like um I don't know, I feel like in a way this is like a form of racism because he's just um he sees that he's black, so he's like attacking him. And yeah, like this scene was just like really hard to watch. And then the second scene we see, like that's the aftermath of what the police officer calls. So this is how they left him, and this is actually what one of the reasons why Leroy wanted to join the police force. He mentioned that he wanted to join so that he can make changes to the system and um, possibly like help change their racist attitudes. So additionally, I wanted to talk about these two scenes as well. So these scenes show that Leroy was not getting the support from his people. They thought he was a traitor, and yeah, he was just being called like awful things by his people because they didn't support his decision on wanting to join the police force. So in the first scene, we actually see Leroy not getting any support from his father. He was upset that Leroy was joining the police force because they were the ones that caused him harm in the first place, and that caused him to be in the hospital for a while. And then the second scene shows that Leroy was being called a traitor by his own people. He was being called a traitor because he didn't step in when he saw two white police officers using excessive force on a black man. And it's just sad because the fact that Leroy was doing this for his people, he was trying to make changes to the system, but his people didn't see it that way. They thought that he was a traitor, and I don't know. It's just sad that he was getting so much hate from his own people when like he was doing this because of them. So next slide. Okay, so I also wanted to talk about this specific scene because this scene stood out to me because we see that everyone was passing the test and moving forward except for Leroy. For that reason, he decided to go confront his boss, and he made the statement. His boss made the statement that because sometimes in life it's just better to just blend in. And I don't know, I feel like this scene, it's just sad to see that Black people were getting held back because others believed it was better for them to blend in rather than stand out. And yeah, it's just sad that Leroy wasn't being treated the same as the other coworkers, even though his boss claimed that everyone received equal treatment. But in reality, I don't think that was the case. So, what have critics said about this episode? So, according to Haynes 2020, Red, White, and Blue shows Logan's own experiences with policing, the decision he made to switch careers and join the force, and the tensions that his decision threw up in the workplace, his family, and community. Furthermore, the article mentioned that although McQueen thought about an early concept for Small Axe 11 years ago, the release of the series comes during a year when the Black Lives Matter movement, and in particular, unchecked police violence against Black people, has received renewed international attention. Logan believes the same prejudices that existed when he was an officer still need to be unlearned. Lastly, the article mentioned that official figures this year indicated that Black people are 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched by police officers than white people across England and Wales, and that the use of stop and search powers is at a 6-year high. So I feel like this just shows that Black people are still being mistreated and are still being, and people are still being racist towards them at times. So to conclude, these two Small Axe episodes show what Black people were going through back then. As a matter of fact, they were dealing with racism, mistreatment, judgment, etc. Overall, my goal with this project is to inform others of the injustices Black people were going through back then and are still currently experiencing in current times. And yeah, this pretty much concludes my presentation. This is the bibliography. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this presentation and I hope you have a great spring break. Thank you so much.